Hello and welcome. It's been a while since I've had the opportunity to do a DevLogs episode, but I feel like a lot of growth has occurred. The grind never ends, and especially when it comes to dealing with certain behavior online, I think one of the biggest challenges I face is remembering that they see me as something I'm not. And when they project it onto me, or they point things out as if we're not aware of it, or they believe that they can pray to their God about my well-being as if they know anything about my experience when their beliefs don't account for people like me. So if you deny my identity and you pray for someone who's not me, why should I be grateful? And I guess today I just wanted to share how important certain components are, because simple electronics can be broken down to two basic things. There are inductors and there are capacitors. And well, today is a special day because today I'm going to tell you about the transistor. You see, in 1947, there were many sightings of aliens in Roswell, New Mexico. Now, these sightings have never adequately been justified or proven false, and in December of that year, all of a sudden, the development of the point contact transistor was manifested, and 22 years later, we landed on the moon. Wowee. You know, things move fast when technology adapts, and the people who are stuck in dogmatic ways of the past in a day and age when information should freely flow through the channels that have been built, and wealth shouldn't be hoarded into a pool, but rather applied in a way that brings people out of this struggle. People who stand against that, what side are you on? You can defend your rigidity in your belief system, but enforcing your beliefs on others is absolutely monstrous. And what's wild is they project that monster onto me and treat me as if I did something wrong by offending them because I said the president should be a trans woman. And you know, I'm gonna just say it. If I were president, I simply wouldn't have gone to war with Iran. I simply wouldn't have gotten gas prices to be raised to ridiculous levels. I simply wouldn't have joined Epstein on his island and done pedophilia like the president we have now. Why would anyone reasonable do that? And why would people who live in a system run by those people not hold the people who are actually guilty of these offenses accountable, and instead they try and hold me accountable because I offended their all-powerful, all-knowing deity? You think God doesn't understand a joke? Jesus Christ. You know, and talk about trans Jesus. Jeez Louise is actually what she went by before they crucified her, because they said, whoa, Jeez Louise, you can't go by that name and pronouns. That's not acceptable. And, you know, they tossed her up, and then they didn't even write her real name down. And that's why we have Easter, because some people wanted to be transphobic and then write out the history of transistors from all of electronics, even though we would have had a much more firm understanding of electronics had we understood those concepts back 2,000 years ago. But let's go ahead and keep it hidden from the masses, even though it truly is a society we live in, you know? And I'm sure that at some point conservatives will come to find a way of living that isn't so imbibed in fear and hate and just projecting that onto people on the internet because, you know, you can say what you will about how I go about communicating on the internet, but if they weren't in my comments, they'd be somewhere else, and they still are everywhere else because transphobia is a real thing, and yet the world acts as if the trans person who complains about a transphobic world is the issue, and it's not our complaints that are the problem, it's that our complaints aren't actually heard and offered any form of legitimacy because trans kids dying in the street because families ostracize them. How many more times does that happen relative to the cisgender kid who's forced to be trans by some progressive family? Because that almost never happens. If you look at the proportion of trans sort of benefits from transitioning, the research shows that there are significant benefits to when trans people are just treated like normal people, and at the same time, these people who are willing to acknowledge that there is a degree of like not great stuff going on always seem to miss that I also have PTSD from a world that rejected me out of my career path. And then, I don't know, it feels strange to have my experience as I have it, and I try to like share it because I think it's kind of interesting, you know? How many people go, yeah, I think I'm okay to kind of move on from this chapter in my life, and then are met with someone who shares a old friend group, you know? You don't expect it. You don't expect when you Google Bahrain to read a story about how your antennas were blown up in a drone strike. No one expects that. But at the same time, those antennas are the things that stressed me out enough to even seek mental health, like, help while I was in the military, which led to me being like comfortable learning to express myself and process my emotions, which is simply what I'm doing here. And if you take my 10 minutes or so and you go, oh wow, I can't believe you said this or that. Well, you know, it's not like I'm sitting here trying to tell everyone exactly how the world operates. I am speaking from the perspective of an incredibly narrow window where, for whatever reason, I get hit with some weird, like, things that just create echoes through this chaotic existence. And at the same time, I don't let it keep me from trying to do good where I can, and I do believe in economic systems which benefit everyone. Of course, bureaucracy's bad. I'd be the first to tell you that, because if you looked at my experience, the only reason I was processed out of the Navy was because of a bureaucratic system that failed me as a trans person. And it's wild to try and cope with this pressure of ostracization from the fucking country I served when everyone goes and talks about how like this and that, but at the end of the day, it's mostly Islamophobia, because they'll point to that as like a country that hates me, and then they won't acknowledge that I came back to a country that hates me. And yes, I am not dead yet. I am not hunted by the police, but what happens when that day comes? Is there even going to be anyone who understands what the experience of a trans person is like? Or are people just going to simply watch as it happens and do nothing, just as they did with the pedophile president? And again, don't put the fucking problems of straight white men on me, because there's no way I even would be... I didn't do anything other than come onto YouTube and broadcast myself. Because you know what? I'm not gonna handle it and just be on my own and struggling. I'm gonna kind of talk about it and make friends and have woke extravaganzas and share that, You know, I love the Matrix, but I absolutely hate that the men's rights movements or whatever manosphere shit has appropriated a trans work of art and then taken it to be like a pinnacle of their beliefs, while at the same time doing nothing but invalidating the rights and existence of trans people because their belief system is built on hierarchy where they must oppress others because they feel as though they are oppressed. And so out of fear, they lash out using a system that benefits them. But hey, as someone who was on the receiving end of the boot, hey, what do I know about that, you know? Anyway, thank you so much for sticking around. I really appreciate the support I do get on here, and I think in a lot of ways I didn't expect that last video would rub people as incorrectly or whatever as it did and stoke so many mean comments, but that's not every video. It's just sometimes that's the way the internet is, and I think it's unfortunate because the world doesn't have to be like this, but I'm not the one that has to change for the world to get to be a better place. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I love you, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.